Well, hi everybody. Welcome to the live stream. A little bit different this than sitting in the cabin. It's a little bit more nerve-wracking. It's something I don't normally do, so apologies if I hesitate from time to time. First things first, I guess. Is there anybody else there? Can anybody see or hear me all right? I've no clue whether you're getting the audio and video. Somebody could pop something in the comment section. That would be great. Just let me know. Deathly silence. Well, we are a bit early, so let's see if people join us. If you do join in, just stick something in the chat so that I know somebody's there. Just say hi. According to the channel, there are 2 people that are there, but I don't see any comments. Oh, here we go, look. 2 people finally popped up. Heather, hi. Lux Report, hi. How are you all doing? I hope you are staying safe and well. I know where Heather is. Where's Lux from? Steve Hughes, hi, welcome. We've got people in. That's nice to see. I was a bit worried I might be sat on my own. It is Christmas. I can't sit on my own at Christmas. Come on. Let's have some more people coming in. We'll give it a couple of minutes, see if many people join in or any more people join in. Oxford. Lux is from Oxford. Okay. Steve, whereabouts are you from? I can tailor the comments to suit who's in Swindon. Okay. As to who's in the chat. So we've got UK and US right now. It's great to see somebody. Russia and Ukraine. Lux is worried about Russia and Ukraine. I'll touch on that as we go through what's been going on in 2021. If you were to believe the media, it's all hell breaking loose. They've got reporters wandering up and down the trenches along the lines between the Ukraine troops and the Russian troops. But yeah, we will touch on that. So we've got people in the stream, so that's good. So I won't keep you guys hanging around. Thanks for coming in on time. And as and when people join in, they can play catch up, can't they? I have got a couple of notes jotted down, mainly to remind me of what I've been doing this year rather than what's been going on in the big wild world. So if I keep looking down, it's to remind myself what I've been up to rather than what's been going on in the world, because I'm sure we all know what's been going on. It's been a really busy year in 2021. We kind of came into the start of this year off the back of COVID, and COVID in its various different names has played a part all the way through this year. It's not gone away. And as we head rapidly towards the end of this year, it looks like it's not going to go away in 2022 either. So we've had everything. We've had the travel bans for people traveling, not just international, but throughout the country. We've had restrictions on who you can meet up with and in how many numbers, where you can visit, whether that's the pub, the restaurant, the cinema, the football match, whatever, and how many of you can meet in a group. We've had all of those restrictions pretty much all the way through the year. It was only towards the back end of the year that we gradually started lifting those restrictions, and that's caused massive chaos, both in terms of people's personal life, but it's also wreaked havoc with the economy of pretty much all countries around the world. One of the big knock-on effects from that has been disruption to supply chains, and we're still seeing that now. Even as recently as this last week, I mentioned in one of the videos, don't know if it was this weekend or the weekend before, we're still seeing gaps in shelves. Lots of Christmas stuff kicking around, but canned goods aisles, toiletries, over-the-counter medicines, things like that, definitely still gaps in there. And as you look at the various news reporting and a lot of coverage by other YouTube channels, they're also seeing similar kinds of things. So the supply chain problem hasn't really gone away. Lux is talking about toilet paper. I didn't notice toilet paper so much because I've got that much of it. And no, I'm not guilty. I'm not the one that went out and emptied the shelves in 2020. I've always had lots. But I have noticed just normal tissue paper, for blowing your nose. I've noticed shortages of that for sure. So paper goods, yeah, there probably is still a shortage going on. Other things this year particularly, and I'll mention it again when I talk about what I've been up to this past year, weird weather all over the world. We've had massive wildfires in different countries, not just one, US, Australia and others, particularly badly hit with forest fires due to the dry conditions. We've had flooding, we've had tropical storms and different kinds of high winds, things like tornadoes, hurricanes, or in the case of the UK, big wind, causing damage. We've had flooding, including here in the UK, and recently here in the UK, we've had flooding. We've had all kinds of knock-ons from the weather in terms of pests. And again, I'll touch on that when I talk about what I got up to in 2021. Some countries, big food production countries, seen massive issues with swarms of locusts in African countries, and a huge mouse problem in Australia. I'm not quite sure what that was about. I had hoped that one of the channel subscribers, Oxygen Farmer, I was hoping he might have popped up, but I guess the time difference is a bit too much between here and Australia. He's probably still in bed. They had a huge issue, millions and millions and millions of mice running around the country, eating up everything inside. So weird weather and little knock-on effects from weird weather. And they will definitely have an impact on food supply chain in next year, not just this year. Lux has given me some more updates about shortages, crazy prices, Christmas food in the supermarkets. Yeah. £8 for cabbages. Yeah. Vegetables, talking about food supply, this year, I commented lots and lots of times in my videos throughout this year about really poor quality fruits and vegetables in the supermarkets through this year. I have to confess, this last week or so, I've not noticed that so much, but it has been a consistent problem through the year. Quality has not been there, and availability also hasn't always been there. Now, whether that's due to the weird weather we've had and it's impacted on the growing seasons, or whether that's a purely UK Brexit related matter, I'm not entirely sure. But irrespective of the reason, it has been an issue. And I think the weather this year will have an impact on next year for sure. Already, there are lots of food producing countries around the world that have said we're not actually exporting, certainly not in the quantities that they used to do. And in some cases, just not exporting at all. They're keeping back that food for use in their own country. Just read another comment. Still have plenty of beer, but you can't get painkillers. No, I said earlier, over-the-counter medicines, I've noticed a lot of shortage. I tend to keep well stocked up on just basic things like Panadol, paracetamol, ibuprofens, things like that. And I've noticed that there have been massive gaps on shelves. I was talking to somebody, I can't remember who it was, about cough medicine and kids' cold and flu remedies. And they were complaining that they were finding it really difficult to get hold of. So yeah, whether it's down to the COVID supply chain issues, or whether it's due to COVID because people didn't go to work, I don't know. But certainly lots of things in shorter supply, lesser quality this year. And since a lot of manufactured goods, including food, canned goods for that matter, is manufactured and then there's a delay getting it into the supply chain. So stuff that you see on the shelves this year is generally what was produced last year. So in 2022, I'm anticipating that these shortages and this disruption will definitely continue. Tied into all of those things, the COVID, the supply chain issues, inflation. That's been hot in the news. It wasn't so much earlier on in the year. It was fairly quiet in the media. I did mention it several times going through this year in various videos, saying prices are going up, it is coming. And then as we kind of went through the year, other people started commenting, saying that yes, they were noticing price increases and also noticing shrinkflation. So pack size been reduced, but charging the same amount for it. Can't find buttercup syrup, over-the-counter medicines, and for kids. So yeah, inflation gradually creeping up through the year, but in recent months, certainly the last 2 or 3 months, it's become mainstream media news. As usual, government statistics way out of kilter with what the reality is. They started off saying it was just over 2%, then it was 3%, then it was 4%. Don't worry, it's transitory, it's only short term. And then over the last month, they've finally admitted it's not transitory, it's here for quite some time yet, well into next year and growing. It's hit 6.8% official figures in the US, 4.8%, and then more recently, about a week ago, 5.1% here in the UK. In reality, you can double that and you'd be somewhere around about the true figure. And even government now is saying it's going to be more in 2022. As if that wasn't enough, because that's a lot of stuff in 2021. There's been civil unrest, kind of connected to COVID, but also in some countries connected to cost of living and inflation. You've seen lots of protests in different countries around the world. Turkey, more recently, particularly badly hit. Their economy's pretty much collapsed. Their currency definitely has collapsed. The lira has just plummeted through the floor. So disruptions there, civil protests there. Mainland Europe, including here in the UK, civil protest around COVID and lockdown and restrictions, and growing more and more, including here in the UK. Over the last month or so, since we started getting more restrictions coming back into force again, there's been a significant rise in the amount of civil disorder, or should I say protest, around the UK. Noticeable in the US as well, as more and more people are pushing back. Given that this week, literally this week, and in fact today, more restrictions have been announced, which will come into effect immediately after Christmas. So already 3 out of the 4 UK countries have decided that from the 27th of December, we're going back into this full-blown lockdown, restrictions on how many people can meet, where you can go, got to wear masks in public, got to maintain social distancing, travel restrictions. Lots of stuff now seems to be coming. It's only a matter of time now before the overall UK government follows suit with England, and we're all back in the same zone again in terms of restrictions here in the UK. So I don't imagine people are going to be very happy, particularly as we run towards New Year celebrations, if those lockdowns are going to continue into the New Year period. I suspect we'll be having a lot more protest and civil disobedience. On a kind of similar vein to civil unrest, over the last couple of months, you'll have seen an uptick. We had civil unrest in Hong Kong earlier in the year as the Chinese government started to take more and more control over Hong Kong. That made lots of mainstream media. And for a while, it looked like things could get really hot in Hong Kong. As it turns out, they didn't. Chinese government won and restored order, shall we say. That went away. But over recent months, we've now seen talk about Chinese intentions in Taiwan and the South China Sea. Lots of military activity from both the Chinese and Western militaries as ships kind of pass each other and demand access through international shipping lanes, and planes fly over, and all kinds of stuff going on. Lots and lots of saber rattling in the South China Sea. And then more recently, lots of media attention and government attention from the West, focusing on Russia. That takes us back to the one of the first comments by Lux, as Ukraine seeks to maintain stronger and closer relationships with the EU. And Russia is not happy with that, and so is saber rattling and deploying troops along the Ukraine border. Though, having said that, if you look at where they actually are deployed, they're not on the border. They're quite some distance away from the border. But nevertheless, there are Russian troops in eastern Ukraine. I mentioned those trenches earlier where the reporters were walking up. You do have Russian troops and Ukraine separatist troops on one side and Ukraine nationalist troops on the other. The danger is when all of this saber rattling starts, particularly when mainstream media picks it up and starts repeating and repeating these messages and promoting it in the public eye. There is a danger that somebody somewhere on either side could do something silly. It doesn't take much for a Cold War to turn into a hot war. So it is worth keeping an eye on. Whether either the China-Taiwan or the Russia-Ukraine issues would affect the rest of the world is debatable. A couple of countries, including the UK, have already come out and said we wouldn't deploy troops to Ukraine if Russia invaded, which might sound heartless for the Ukrainians if there are any watching, but that's a good thing in my mind. The last thing we want now is another Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya. We don't. We've done quite enough of that over the last decade, and not in my name, I would say. But yeah, things can quickly get out of control and escalate just by somebody doing something silly. So it is something to look at. But personally, I think I've mentioned it in a few videos. I wouldn't expect either China or Russia to do anything right now. Maintaining control of another country or even part of another country is a difficult task. It needs lots of boots on ground. Have they got the will to do that? Debatable. Have they got the troop numbers to sustain that indefinitely? Debatable. But who knows? It's certainly something to keep an eye on. Apologies as I lean forward. I'm just trying to get the comments because the comments are tiny, tiny, tiny on the screen. Gareth, hi. Hi. From Scotland, another New Year ruined for us. There we go. I was just talking about that. England will follow within a matter of a day or so. I guarantee that. Israel versus Iran. Israel, I have to be careful now what I say because I have some experience. Israel is always wanting to do something with Iran. and not just Iran, Syria also. Even before the current Syria crisis came and went, Israel has always been targeting Syria, Lebanon, and Iran. They are terrified that Iran will get possession of a nuclear weapon. It does terrify them, even though Israel officially doesn't, but really does have nuclear weapons. So they're always going to do what they think is right for them in terms of making sure that Iran is down and stays down economically, financially. I did mention Iran in a video way back early this year. In fact, it might have even been last year. I can't remember now, in all honesty, because there was a lot of tensions. It was when Trump was in power in the US, so it must have been last year. There was a whole media hype, and it looked like we might be having a war with Iran. Again, going back to what I mentioned about China and Russia, be careful what you wish for, because even though Iran's been under sanctions, God, it seems like forever. It's certainly 20 years plus that they've been under sanctions, and their economy's pretty much buggered as a result of that. They still do have a formidable military. Recent escapades in the Gulf with shipping will have demonstrated that. They wouldn't be a walkover, and I don't care which country thinks that they could do it alone or in conjunction with others. The only way really that Israel could do something dramatic in Iran would be if they did drop one of the big bombs. And no country wants to see that happen. So I suspect that Israel is under an awful lot of pressure behind the scenes not to be silly. They might get away with the odd airstrike here and there, targeting specific facilities, but full-blown war, I'm doubting it pretty highly. Just quickly checking to see who's commenting on what. Everyone's talking about COVID restrictions. Yeah, so Israel, yeah, they'll always be having to go to Iran. The West in general, financially, economically, will always be having to go to Iran. Militarily, certainly not invading. That's not going to happen. If it did, it would be a suicide mission. Iran's got lots of ballistic missiles that they can launch. They can reach Israel and could just take out Israel. So, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. Skirmishes, for sure. Bit of saber rattling, for sure. The odd targeted strike here and there, like they did with one of their generals, perhaps. But to impact on the West, other than economically or supply chain route, doubtful. All of that combined through 2021, all of those different issues, has had an effect on markets, financial markets. They've been up and down, up and down, up and down like yo-yos. It did look this last few weeks as if they might actually collapse at one point. There were a couple of days of significant 3, 4, 5% drops. And now they seem to have stabilized as we've headed into the Christmas week. So fingers crossed that doesn't happen in the short term, but longer term. US announced that they're going to stop or going to draw down on tapering. So all of this money printing and bond buying they've been doing, and they're not alone. Other Western governments in the UK and mainland Europe have also been doing that. That's really what's been keeping the markets afloat. And the public afloat during COVID, for that matter. That's going to start getting wound down. So it will be interesting to see what effect that has as we go into the new year. So that reduction in the amount of money printing, coupled with interest rate rises, which started here in the UK this month. We had our first one in, God, it must be a decade now. That will definitely have an effect on markets and personal finances. So that is something still to look out for as we head into the new year. People's finances, if they haven't been impacted already by COVID, they will be impacted by the downturn in the economic markets and the uptick in inflation. So lots and lots and lots gone on around the world during 2021. But to end that on a positive note, I would just emphasize we're all still here. We still have everything pretty much available in the shops. The financial markets haven't collapsed yet. So hopefully, as we go through the winter, through Christmas and into the new year, we should be on a pretty positive note in that we can still take action to prepare for any of these continued crises through 2022 or any new ones that might crop up. We still have the opportunity to do things in our personal lives to make things better and to improve our preparedness for whatever might come in 2022. So that's a bit of a brief run through. It's half an hour almost. It wasn't that brief a run through of all of the stuff that went on in 2021. So before I talk about what I did in 2021, let's have a quick look in the comments and see what else we've got. Russia and China getting closer. Russia and China have always been close, going back to when Russia was the former Soviet Union. Got my coffee, look. It's going cold again. It's like being in the cabin all over again. The main reasons that they kind of club together, they do this particularly whenever there's a meeting of the G7 or the G20 or the United Nations, they always club together. Noticeable when we've had our little Western excursions into various countries under the guise of democracy, freedom, and all that old nonsense. So Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Russia and China always came together to oppose whatever it was that Western governments intended to do. And they've done that really because those two countries have been the main boogeymen for the Western governments, Western media, going back as far as I can remember. And I'm 59 years old, so that's a long time. So they have a common cause, if you like. They don't necessarily see eye to eye in policy, especially over more recent years, as both Russia and China have kind of gone from all-out full-blown communism to a kind of communist capitalism, a kind of a mixed match of the two. But since they are still all sanctioned to death by the rest of the world, well, that's not strictly true, by Western governments, then it's pretty obvious that they would stick together. And bear in mind that both China and Russia have huge economies, have huge reserves of labor and capital. If you check the gold reserves, China and Russia, or the currency reserves of China and Russia, you'd be amazed to see how much better off they are than Western governments are. If you check the resources that they have, natural resources and labor resources at their disposal, same thing. They both have big populations. They have huge expanses of country that contains pretty much everything you need to be completely self-sufficient. And they could be if they wanted. So it should be no surprise that Russia is one of the, if not the main oil gas supplier into Europe, and China is the factory of the world. Big problems with both of those things that Western governments really need to get a grip on. And I've talked about this in previous videos as well. Why would you, as a sovereign nation, rely completely on another sovereign nation, particularly one that you say is your enemy? Why would you be reliant on them for things that you really need as a country to sustain your way of life? It's just nonsense. Why would you do that? And the sooner Western governments get off the high horse and suddenly start thinking for themselves and taking back self-sufficiency for their nation, as we are as preppers, the better for all of us. And it might just cool down those military tensions that we have. Can tell you, I don't understand that. Lux, you might want to expand on that. Goat 2 can tell you the elite's plan. Who's goat 2? Come on, enlighten us. Anyway, 12 people now on the stream. If you've not commented, don't hide in the shadows. Come on. Just say hi. We're all friendly people here. So 2021, that's what was going on in the world. It's still going on, lots of it, carrying forward into 2022. So keep your eye on that. Paul Oates, hi, how are you doing? So what did I get up to in 2021? I wrote a little list. It's actually a bigger list because it's 3 pages. No, it's not. I lie. It's 4 pages. As I was writing this, I was doing it month by month and trying to look back and see what it was that I got up to in 2021. Michael Douglas, hi. Another US cousin. How are you doing, sir? Yeah, I was stunned. I went through this list, and it's because I'm doing this week in, week out. I don't really get to notice the impact of the change that I'm doing week in, week out. It's like a gradual, it all blurs into one. And I'm kind of that wrapped up in what I'm doing that week that I kind of forget what I've been doing previous weeks and previous months. It was only when I started writing this down that I thought, wow, did I do all that in 2021? iPet Goat 2 is an animation released over 8 years ago. Showed many events. All right, okay, thanks for that. That's a bit like The Simpsons. There's a whole conspiracy theory thing about The Simpsons in that they've predicted all these different events going through the last 10, 15 years. Crazy things at the time that people said, no, that will never happen, like Mr. Trump becoming president of the US. So I don't know, do these writers, these creative people have some kind of premonition or prediction ability? Don't know, but there's an awful lot of stuff that seems to go through TV programs like The Simpsons or movies that have come to fruition, especially sci-fi movies. If you all cast your minds back to things like the original Star Trek series and communicators and all this different technology, it's gradually all becoming true. So who knows? If I had a tinfoil hat and put it on, are there people from the future coming back and writing these stories? That will set another little conspiracy theory running. So yeah, the creative animation was paid created, and we'll not say by who. Maybe it was a future person who's come back. So what did I get up to in 2021? Well, if I go back to the start of the year, January, lots of stuff going on, even though it was bitterly cold back in January. I was trying to kind of plan ahead for the year. I added some solar to the cabin. I realised that over the winter months, I wasn't getting sufficient sunlight captured to put electric store into the batteries. So I upped that from 2 panels to 4 panels, so 400 watts. I was busy buying things for the planting season, so compost was a regular buy through January. I was digging out my seed collection, deciding what I was going to plant and try and use the old seeds, buying things like seed trays and preparing those with compost ready for planting. And actually in January, as an experiment, I planted my first potatoes. I couldn't believe I did that in January. But as you'll have seen as I go through the year in the different videos, it worked. Narrow escape in terms of temperature. If I'd not had the polytunnel or the garden room, I'd have not got away with that. February, we had loads of snow back in February here in the UK. Don't know if you remember that or not. I was busy buying construction materials pretty much all month. I was trying to stock up on timber and concrete blocks ready to do a construction project. And because of COVID and the supply chain disruption, prices were high and availability was very, very low. So I did struggle finding enough materials. Brought some water barrels from home that I was using for water storage outside in the shed, actually, at the house here, because I was planning to construct a chicken coop and chicken pen, and I wanted a water supply for that. And I planted my first vegetable seeds in trays in February. March, chicken coop construction was under full swing, but it was a battle in March. We had lots of wind and rain almost throughout all of March, so that was difficult. But on a success note, seedlings were sprouting inside the garden room in March. So it just goes to show that little bit of shelter, it is possible to get an early start, even earlier if you've got heating, but I'll come to that later on. April, 3rd of April, actually got the chickens. It seems a lifetime ago now. I guess I've got that used to them during the course of the year. And of course I bought 4 hens and a cockerel originally, and then an extra 2 a little bit later. But also by April, I had potatoes not just sprouted, but I'd actually mounded up the first few containers of potatoes. And I also bought the beehive ready for the bees to come. Bit of a setback though in April, wasn't expecting late frosts, but we did get late frosts into the middle of April. But having said that, by the end of April, I'd got all of the raised beds planted out. Everyone's talking conspiracy theory now, futurists and technology. From May, for quite a few months, we had a major change in weather. You remember I was talking earlier about weird weather in 2021. We had unseasonably late frosts this year, but we also had a really prolonged and unusual heat wave. And it started in May, just as I was wanting to construct a storage shed. So I was struggling for materials again, and pretty much everything I did outside, I just ended up drenched in sweat. It was absolutely roasting all the way through May, all the way through June. June was a successful month though in terms of planting and harvesting. I had strawberries fruiting, true potato seeds that I planted also sprouted, but I had my first potato harvests in June, which is pretty damned early really. Well, for me certainly anyway. And the bees arrived in June. Having said that, still got setbacks. We had major pest problems. You remember I mentioned those earlier on in the video as well. I was suffering from birds, rabbits, squirrels, slugs, snails, caterpillars, pretty much everything you can think of I was getting on all of the raised beds and in the polytunnel as well. July, still got the heat wave going on. Got loads of potato berries in July, and I've saved seeds from some of those. We had solar flares in June, which contributed still to the heat wave. It continued all the way through June. The temperatures hit 44 degrees in the cabin and the garden room in mid-June, which is bloody hot. To such a degree, actually, that I started to run out of water. I was really touch and go as we headed through July as to whether or not I would actually have completely run out of water for watering the gardens and for, by that time I'd got the chickens. So I was a bit concerned about the chickens as well, running out of water. But having said that, still I managed to keep on top of the watering. It was a struggle, but I got lots and lots of potatoes, carrots, cucumbers, tomatoes, strawberries and blueberries, other vegetable crops, broccoli, cauliflower, swedes and sweet corn. Bit of a failure, but not due to planting conditions, but due to those pest problems. August was still hot, still lots of pest issues on the raised beds. I managed to find some additional IBC containers for water storage. I think we had 2 days of light rain, which luckily managed to fill one of the new containers, and pretty much saved my bacon, really. So bought those at the right time, installed them at the right time, and in subsequent years now, I think I'm pretty much safe. Even if we had a repeat of this year's heat wave, I'd now have enough water storage. So it does pay to kind of think ahead, and to, even though you might not usually have such extremes of temperature and difficulty with watering, it does just pay to err on the side of caution. I'm really pleased I managed to just keep banging away at installing storage for water harvesting. There was one big issue in July, in August, that I'll come back to in a second. But the success for the harvests of all of those things that I mentioned meant I actually had a surplus in some things. So I was looking at ways of storing. You might remember I did videos on making tomato chutney with the green tomatoes. I did some elderberry jam from the elderberry trees on the field boundary. Lots and lots of veggies harvested during August. But the big thing in August really was something that's still ongoing and which I've not talked about pretty much since August. You might remember I had a malicious complaint to the council about my activity on the land. In a nutshell, people were saying, oh, it's spoiling the peace and tranquility of the area. It looks like a construction site. Maybe gypsies have moved in. Lots and lots of spurious stuff that just actually wasn't true. As a result of that, I had a visit by the planning officers from the local council. Long story short, I submitted a planning application. I'm not entirely convinced that legally it was required for the nature of the buildings that are on that land. However, the planning officer suggested it was a requirement. So I complied and submitted an application. It took forever doing detailed drawings and schematics of the polytunnel, the cabin, and various bits attached to the cabin, like the storage shed, the tractor garage, garden room, so on and so forth. And believe it or not, the chicken coop and chicken pen. That was submitted back in November. It's now gone through the consultation period, and I'm waiting for a response, whether that's a rejection or an approval, which is why I've not mentioned it over the last couple of months. There was a period for public consultation and comment, so anybody who had an objection could register their objection formally. Nobody did. That doesn't, however, mean that the planning will just go through. I suspect I might still be in for a bit of a fight, that the application might still be rejected, in which case I would have to go for an appeal process. But I've not heard anything yet. It's very close now to Christmas. So unless somebody presses the send button on the email as they leave the office on Christmas Eve, I suspect that's going to carry over into the new year. But as and when I do have additional information about that, then I will do it on a video on one of the cabin chats. But I've deliberately held off making public comment, shall we say, on YouTube until the consultation period for planning application went through. So all of these little mysterious comments I've made in previous videos over the last couple of months about, we'll talk about that some other time. That's what it was about. Let me just quickly look at the comments. I learned a lot about family from Jeremy Clarkson. He's funny. He's so funny. COVID will help you with planning. It'll delay everything, which is good for you. It might actually help delay. Yeah, I've deliberately steered clear of talking about the complaint and the subsequent planning process with the council. I don't know who watches YouTube. One thing I do know for sure is that whoever made the complaint has seen at least one of my videos. just from the nature of the information they put in their complaint, anonymous complaint. So they've definitely seen at least one video that I've put out. So who knows, maybe they're watching right now. If you are watching right now, pop a comment in the comment section as to why you felt it necessary to complain, and what it is that you think I'm doing on there that I shouldn't be doing. Open forum. Hopefully there've been no issues with the planning application. All your buildings are agricultural use. Yes, they are. And in actual fact, the planning officer that came down to actually visit the site, I met him on the land. He had a good walk around. I showed him every single building, inside and out, what was in there, what it was for, so on and so forth. And he absolutely agreed that everything that he'd seen, and he'd seen everything, was for agricultural use, and that the land itself was agricultural land. So therefore, everything that was being done on that land was in keeping with the designated use for that land. My chickens are registered with the health authority. The land is registered. It's called a county parish holding number. It's registered as a small holding, essentially, with national government as well as local government. So everything that is being done on there is absolutely above board. It's perfectly within the realms of agricultural use, and he agreed with that. However, there is a story which is archaeological related, to do with historic land use back in ancient times and the way that fields were farmed. Far too much to go on to in the live stream, but once I've got a result from the application, then I will do a video to go in greater detail. And if it is a rejection, then that one particular issue is probably the issue that might crop up as an excuse for the rejection. I don't buy it as an excuse personally, but I'm not the planning guy. So yeah, watch this space, I guess, in terms of what happens with planning. Henry, the mild-mannered janitor. I've not come across you in comments before. So hi and welcome. Maybe it was someone who uses the footpath and they heard you complaining about them talking loudly when on the path. Possibly. It's not something that I do often, but a couple of times, a lot of people who use that footpath that runs behind the wooded area on one of my boundaries, there's a couple of people that go down there and they've got some kind of music, whether it's a portable radio, tape player, I don't know what it is, but it's bloody loud. And I suspect on more than one occasion I've probably mumbled to myself. Whether they would hear me mumbling or not, I don't honestly know, but if they did complain, then who are they to complain about the peace and tranquility if they're blaring music out? Could you not find any land without public paths nearby? I'm sure from your plans for the future you would not want to be close. In all honesty, I don't know if you've seen some of my very early videos from when I was actually started looking for land. I've been looking for land for years and years and years. It's very difficult to get hold of in the UK. It's extremely expensive for what it is in the UK. And the amount of restrictions on use of land in the UK is phenomenal, evidenced by having to put a planning application in for a 6x3 metre polytunnel on a field. So when the opportunity to buy this piece of land came up, it was within budget, just. It was within reasonable travel distance from my home. It was agricultural use. It had no formal restrictions, and there are lots of different types of restrictions on use. It had access to the road, which is another big issue. So it ticked all of the right boxes. The only downside was that it did have that bridleway behind it. But when I weighed up all of the things, that bridleway was something I couldn't really use as an excuse not to buy that land. Plots of land like that come up so infrequently, and certainly in my budget, that had I not bought that piece of land, then I'd have been sat here still without a piece of land. What is it, 2.5 years now, almost 3 years later. And land prices are just going up and up and up and up and up. So even if another similar plot had come available, it would have been unaffordable. I'm pretty sure of that. Future plans. I am actively looking to move house now. Again, finding a house with land just not in my budget. It's not possible within my budget. But finding somewhere a little bit more rural, closer to the land, is possible and just about affordable, depending on how big it is. But who knows in the future? I mean, anything is possible. If another piece of land comes up, I could sell this one and buy that one, then I would consider that. But well, let's see what happens with planning, because that's going to be a key decider. House prices are going crazy. Yes, they are, which is kind of one of the reasons I'm looking to sell mine now, to take advantage of that. But again, that's work in progress, and it's not an instant thing, so we'll see what happens, I guess. Went off on a bit of a sidetrack there, bit of a tangent. I do often get distracted. What have I done? I've done August. September, lots of harvesting, lots of surplus of cucumbers. So I did a video on pickled cucumbers and carrot soup. Still very, very hot. Still almost no rain in September, which is unusual. The supply chain crisis was really starting to affect everybody by September. Prices of materials, goods and services were going crazy for pretty much anything you can think of. And availability was another big issue. So you might remember I started actively stocking up. I was stocking up on fuel. I was stocking up on construction materials. I was stocking up on stupid things like plastic plant pots and those fabric containers that I used, because they were becoming difficult to find and the prices were just going silly. And I was getting a bit worried about availability of food for chickens. So I started adding to my stores of the food for the chickens. Finally, in October, we got some rain. And we actually started getting a lot of rain, which was great. Filled up the water containers. Last harvests were coming in, so the last few potatoes were starting to get harvested. I do still have carrots there, believe it or not. I've kind of left them just to see what happens. At some point this month, I'm going to have to pull them. The potatoes that I harvested, they're still in storage. Again, a bit of an experiment. I'm looking to see how long they will keep. So I'm deliberately not using them, if that makes sense. Pretty much everything I do or done over this last year has been a big experiment and a learning experience, just to see what works and what doesn't. Because if you don't try, you'll never know, will you? And it's okay reading lots of books and watching videos and thinking that, oh, I know what to do. I'll just do this. I'll plant these seeds and they'll magically grow. When you come to do it for real, that's when you really start to learn and properly learn. And what you also learn is sometimes these videos, you see, they're, what's the word for it? Well edited, shall we say. The result you see is not necessarily always the result that you would get were you to copy what they did. So I'm a big believer in try it, just see what happens and experiment. And I'll continue to do that through next year. I'll certainly be trying to heat the garden room this winter and see how early a start I can get on next year, and to try and avoid the problems I had with late frosts this year. You might remember I bought a paraffin heater. I also did a bit of work on the diesel heater, added a solar panel to that to make sure it would work through the winter months. So lots of kind of thinking ahead, planning ahead, and experimenting. Catching up now with where we are. November, I was involved in my final grass cutting, hoovering up the leaves and adding to the compost pile. You might remember that I put last year's composted, the bay that was full from last year. I put that out onto the raised beds, and I've gone through the year, been filling up the compost bins with this year's cuttings, leaves, chicken manure, and sawdust. And very, very recently shuffled that across into that empty end bay, ready to use it next year. Continued stocking up on supplies for the chickens, bought some bee food just to see them through the winter months, just in case they struggle. I'm nervous with the bees because it's the first time that I've had them, a bit like the chickens really. So I'm still busy learning about them, and there is a lot to learn. It's surprising until you start keeping animals, for want of a better description. So in my case, chickens and bees. It's only then really that you start to understand the complexities of what's involved in keeping them. And you do start to worry about them because they're your little babies, aren't they? So you want to do the best you can for them. It's been very cold, wet, as we've headed into this month, into December. We've had, as you'll remember from recent videos, a couple of big storms come through. So we've had high winds, lots of rain, and more recently, snow. So we are definitely into winter. But having said that, I am already thinking about spring and looking forward to spring. I'm spending a lot of time recently kicking back, thinking about when do I want to start planting? What do I want to plant for next year? How early can I get away with it? I'm keen to experiment with my little paraffin heater to see how well that performs. Still a bit nervous about leaving it on its own, but I'll have plenty of little safety and security features built in, hopefully to avoid any accidents, but it's still a little bit nerve-wracking. So lots to think about, and positive stuff to think about. As I look back over 2021, despite the challenges, worldly and in my own activity on the land, learned an awful lot of lessons, and that's what this is all about: lesson learning, what works and what doesn't. Gained a lot of experience and a lot of success over last year in terms of what I actually managed to produce off the land and from the chickens. Hopefully that'll continue in the new year and improve. Chicken numbers look set to increase next year. Hopefully the bee numbers will also increase next year. I'm keen to gain experience on splitting hives and creating new hives. So that's something to look out for next year. And I'm also looking forward to the first honey next year. You might remember I bought that little contraption for spinning the honey out of the hive frames. Can't wait to play with that for real. And who knows what that might bring over subsequent years. Maybe I'll be in a position at some point to actually earn some income from honey or eggs or chickens or whatever else I might produce from the land. So that's a look back on what I got up to in 2021. Lots of stuff, lots of experience. And as I said earlier, as I was writing my little list, it's an awful lot of stuff that's gone on, and a lot of development work in terms of construction, garden, and animals. So I am really pleased with how 2021 went, and looking forward to repeating that and improving on that in 2022. So quick look at the comments, but if anybody's got any questions on anything we've covered, any comments or suggestions on what we've covered, now's your chance. Start popping them out in the comments section. I'll just quickly read through to see what I've missed while I've been waffling on. What we do with the produce you grow. I've ate it, family and friends have eaten it. I've stored some away, like the jams, the pickled cucumbers, the pickled onions. You could annoy the council and open a bushcraft centre and nature reserve. Yeah, I could do a glamping site or a camping site, which would probably annoy them. Or I could potentially store my own caravans, several of them, because everybody needs more than one. I'd love to buy some honey. I would love to produce some honey for you to buy, Paul. I would. And I'm looking forward to that next year. I do keep in touch with my friend Simon, who is a fully fledged beekeeper. He's got lots of hives. And indeed, my hive, or the bees for my hive, came from Simon. So, hi, Simon, if you're watching, or if you watch on the replay. And I was talking to him recently about splitting. So when it comes time to do that, he's kindly offered, don't forget, Simon, he did offer, he's kindly offered to come across and spend a bit of time with me and just kind of walk me through that process. It would be nice in a couple of years' time to see a row of hives across the field. Yeah, I see I'm already getting excited thinking about it. I never understood why the supermarkets import runny beans from Nigeria when we can grow them fine in the UK. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing when you look at the supermarket shelves. I'm sure I've mentioned this in previous videos at some point over the last couple of years. When you look at where our fresh produce comes from, they call it fresh, some of it's not quite so fresh. Even things that we can grow here, so we can grow broccoli, cucumber, potatoes, we can grow all of that. One of the biggest problems is it's seasonal. So whereas historically, if it wasn't available in the fields, you couldn't have it in the supermarkets. Now you can. People fly stuff in from all over the world. So if it's not cauliflower growing season in the UK, it will be somewhere else in the world. So the supermarkets outsource and bring it in from literally everywhere. When I first left the military, God, that's a long time ago now, 1987, I spent a brief stint. I wasn't quite sure what to do in my life. And I spent a brief stint working for a potato company, a potato packaging and import-export company. And I was amazed. I didn't realise that our new potatoes in the supermarkets were coming from Egypt and Cyprus, and more countries than that nowadays. But even back then, we were importing potatoes from Cyprus and Egypt. And that's the same for all of the different kinds of produce. Some stuff, of course, we can't grow here. Your kind of tropical fruits and your hotter Mediterranean type climate fruits, so your lemons, your limes, your oranges, peaches, you just can't grow those here. So yeah, that's understandable they come from abroad, but also there's a cost element to this. Some countries it's the cost of labor and utility prices is so cheap that it's more economic to grow them there and then freight them in. So yeah, lots of reasons for that. But we should, going back to something I mentioned earlier about gas and factories overseas, we should, as a nation, try to be more self-sustaining and to grow more here. If Holland can grow, which is only literally across the water from us, if they can grow under glass all of these different fruits and vegetables and then ship them here at a profit, why can't we do that here and generate more jobs and give us more food security? So yeah, you're right. But what do we know? We're not running the country. It'd be interesting if we were, though. Winter project idea: fit a cup holder on the little red tractor so you can drive. Now there's a sterling idea. Because I'll tell you, when I'm going up and down, up and down, up and down on that tractor, once I do it and I start, I kind of don't want to stop until it's done, and I'll sit out there for hours. And yeah, often I'm desperate for a pee or a coffee. So yeah, cup holder, good idea. Most UK produce can be stored long term: potatoes, runner beans, peas, carrots. Potatoes, yes, absolutely. Beets, yes, absolutely. Don't know about beans and peas and carrot. Well, carrots perhaps. Not as long as potatoes, though. I don't know if you know this, but potatoes that are stored, they're actually chemically treated. They don't just bang them in a barn out in the dark and leave them to it. They're temperature controlled, but they also have a chemical. I forget what it's called now. It's a powder. And it needs washing off because it's toxic. Yeah, the name escapes me. Yeah, they're chemically treated. So another reason not to store them long term, I guess, if you don't want to have chemicals on your food. But yeah, you can store, and that's why I'm experimenting with mine. I've got those boxes of potatoes stored in the cabin, just in cardboard boxes and newspaper, just to see realistically how long they can keep. Because again, I've mentioned it in quite a few videos, the long-term ambition is to try and grow enough during the year and to be able to store that over winter to last me until the next harvest season the following year. It's a bit ambitious so far north in the UK, but as I've said, if you don't try, you don't find out. So I guess you'll find out in future videos. Okay. Alan Reader, hi. You're just about coming in at the end. We're just over the hour now. And although I don't often do live streams, the ones I have done, I've kind of capped them at an hour. I am quite happy to sit here for a while longer if people have got any topics that they want to talk about, questions they want to ask. So now's the chance. Bang them in the comments section. I'll give it a little while to see if any more come through. But if not, I'd start winding up from there. A home brew keg. Do you know, I debated buying a home brew kit earlier this year. One of my friends, I've mentioned him in numerous videos. He's got his own YouTube channel, COVID Hunter. If you're watching, how's it going, mate? You didn't keep any squirrel sandwiches for me the other day. I'm bitterly disappointed. You could have given me an invite. I'd have come round and had some. But yeah, one of my mates, COVID Hunter, he bought a homebrew kit because he's got a little man cave out in his back garden where he does his YouTube videos. And he made some, I think it was lager. Yeah, I'm fairly sure it was lager. But I did debate getting one because you might remember in a previous video, I got loads and loads of windfall apples and pears. Family members got them in the garden, and they had a glut last year and gave them all away. And I was going to use them to make some apple cider or some pear brandy. I was going to try and experiment. Never actually got round to doing it, so that's something else to go on the list for next year. But I've made a point of saying, reserve me a whole sackload. I almost said something else then, of apples and pears, and I will definitely get some kind of a home brew kit because the apocalypse, alcohol will be a good barter item. And I don't mind the odd drink myself, truth be known. So yeah, it is something that I looked at and will look for next year for sure. Keep the live streams coming. Love the interaction. Thank you. I do try my best with my videos. I'm not the greatest wizard when it comes to video editing and such like. And I did do a few live streams. I can't remember if it was this year or last year. It was probably last year, actually. It's kind of difficult getting the time right. because I've got channel subscribers from different countries, and I try to keep everybody happy and do it at a time that suits everybody. I've also been really busy with work. I've just literally changed jobs recently, which has thrown me into complete chaos this last few months. So that, coupled with some of the issues on the land and thinking about house moving, and it's all crazy. So time is an issue, but if there is enough interest and demand out there, and feel free to leave comments in any video. If there is enough interest and demand out there, then yeah, because live streams they're kind of easier to do because you're not editing. You're just sitting like I am now and just talking to camera. And you do get that interaction because people can ask questions. You are responding to comments rather than me just doing several video clips, lumping them together and hoping that it's of interest. So if you are interested in more live streams, let me know in the comments section. And if we've got enough demand, then I'll make a point of doing a sort of half edited video from the field and a bit of this kind of interaction chat on a live stream. Could you sell your surplus crops, eggs, etc.? Don't know if there's any restrictions. There are restrictions around what you can sell. It depends on how you're selling them and what the product is. Things like eggs, you can sell eggs and vegetables at the point of production. It's called farm gate sales. So if I wanted to, I could put a little table out outside the entrance to the field, pop my eggs on there, put my veggies on there, and sell them at the gate. If you move it away, and then it becomes a shop kind of business or a market stall kind of business, there are more restrictions around what you can and can't do. Things like milk, honey, there are quite a lot of restrictions around how you produce, package and sell that kind of product for health reasons, obviously. Similarly with meat, there are some quite strict rules around butchering of well, first of all, killing the animal. There are massive rules around how you do that. There are rules around butchering. You can't just butcher it yourself and sell it. You have to have it done in a professional abattoir. So depending on what it is complicated, but it is possible. And let's see how we get on over the coming years. But yeah, long-term ambition. I mean, I'm getting on a bit now in years, and at some point it would be nice to kind of retire and to do that full time as a retirement lifestyle. And if you are retired, then pensions being as crap as they are, that extra income would help to sustain your lifestyle through retirement. So yeah, long-term ambition, yes. And given the size of the land, I know it's only a small parcel of land, but it's more than sufficient size. It's the time and effort that's required. Size-wise is more than sufficient to sustain me and produce surplus to sell. So watch this space again, I guess. And the same with animals. I do have a long-term ambition. I think I've mentioned it before, certainly for goats. So yeah, it's how quick we can achieve our dreams, I guess. And we'll have to wait and see. Nelly on the land, hi. Missed it. You'll catch it on the replay, don't worry. And Merry Christmas to you. COVID Hunter, there you are. Were you one of the ones lurking in the shadows? I did miss that squirrel sandwich. I saw your pictures on Facebook and was jealous. Hope everything's going okay with you. And it'd be nice to catch up at some point over the Christmas period. Just drop me a message if you've got any spare time. Alan Reader, so selling roadkill is quite difficult. Would you want to sell roadkill? The amount of times I've passed a deer on the side of the road, and I've been tempted to stop The trouble has been that they've almost all been on the motorways where it's really difficult to stop. But were I to see one actually in action, so to speak, yeah, I would definitely stop and throw it in the boot of the car, and then enjoy later. Would you ever eat your own chickens? Yes, in a nutshell. Hopefully not for a while. But at some point, yes, if you're going to have a self-sufficiency lifestyle, and that includes animals, the chickens are for egg production right now. As they expand and as the older birds get older, whether it's by necessity, because I need to eat, or whether it's because they've reached the end of their life naturally, yes, I would eat them. But don't tell the little red one that, because she will get really upset and she'll never come and eat out my hand again. Selling CSAs in private clubs are an easy way to sell locally. CSA. Somebody's asking, Paul's asking what's CSA. Is that, it's got to be community something? Community shops? I don't know. Come on, Nelly, let us know what CSA is. Yeah, as I say, it depends what it is that you're selling. Your fruits and vegetables are pretty simplistic. Eggs, depending on the quantity and where you're selling them, are pretty simplistic. But yeah, other stuff, it depends how publicly you're doing it, I guess, and if your customers will tell tales. All right, yeah, okay, mate. Cheers. A few wild meat goodies. I've seen you've had a lot of success lately in your shoots. It's quite a nice few different types of game bird there. So yeah, I'll more than welcome some wildlife, because I haven't got any in the fridge or the freezer right now. Okay, guys, unless anybody's got anything more pressing questions or things that you want me to talk about, I'm going to start to wrap up. We're an hour and a quarter in, and I could do with a new cup of coffee, and at some point I'm going to have a shower and a bed as well. Lots of chores to be done between now and the weekend when we hit Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So I'm going to be busy Thursday, Friday for sure. I'll be checking in on the chickens tomorrow, as I usually do on a Thursday, and then I'll be community supported agriculture. Oh, okay, thanks for that. Yeah, I'll be dropping in at the weekend on the land at some point, as I usually do. So I'll probably either at the weekend or the start of next week, I'll be doing my normal video, and at some point either a cabin chat or a separate video with a little look forward to what might be coming down the road in 2022, whether that's world events and things we should be looking out for, prepping ideas for 2022, or just plans on what I think I'm going to be up to in 2022. Bob67, hi. Yeah, everyone's into the greetings and salutations for Christmas now, which is nice. It's really nice to see the interaction on the chat. We've got a really nice hardcore of channel subscribers who regularly drop comments into the comment section of the videos, and it's nice to see all of the friendly interaction between all the people who are on the live stream in the chat section. It's what this channel really is all about. It's about trying to build a community of like-minded people who have an interest in prepping, to exchange ideas, top tips, tricks, suggestions for prepping self-sufficiency, and just building that little community. There's an awful lot of people out there that would benefit from this kind of information. So the more activity we can have on the channel, the better, because it helps promote the videos through that damned YouTube algorithm. Sandra Campbell, hi, saw you live, glad I made it. Utah, USA. Yeah, Merry Christmas. Yeah, lots of people saying Merry Christmas. So yeah, we're at the end. So sorry, Sandra, but you've just literally come in as we're doing the wrap up. So give it 5 or 10 minutes for the video to process, and it'll be available on the replay on the channel. I will definitely speak to you all before the new year. Absolutely. I'll try and put out a little Christmassy thing over the weekend, Christmas Day, Boxing Day. But just in case, I'll take the chance now to thank you all very, very much for being with me through 2021 and watching my little journey through the YouTube videos. Thank you to everybody who supported me and who's commented, given their suggestions, the benefit of their knowledge, skills, experience on the channel. Really appreciate that. And I'm sure that other people who watch the videos also appreciate those comments. I say it in every video, but wherever you are and whatever you're doing, I hope you all are staying safe and well. I do hope that 2021, despite the challenges, has been a good year for you. And wish you all and your families a very, very Merry Christmas, and look forward to a very happy, prosperous and peaceful new year for all of us. So do take care. I'm going to sign off the stream now. Thanks all for taking the time to come on the live chat. Nice to see so many people here. Nice to see the interaction, and I'll catch up with you all, as I always say, in the next video. So take care, and I'll see you again soon.